Mom, be honest. You envy us. You never rose above the position of cashier. You can count your professions on the fingers of one hand. A cleaner, a cashier at a gas station, a sales manager at a supermarket, a supervisor and a storekeeper. And your children run large companies. Now you will finally have a chance to eat in expensive restaurants like this. Do you know how much this salad or steak costs? That salary is enough for 10 dinners here, my daughter tells me. And when all the guests around her fall silent, she laughs out loud and says that she was joking. I get up from the table, without touching either the salad or a piece of meat, and I offer her something that will remove that hypocritical smile from her face. When she opens the envelope, her world will turn upside down, because you can't insult your own mother. Someone has to finally explain this to her. I'm Alison, 62 and unbreakable, even if I look like the kind of woman who keeps extra napkins in her purse just in case. My daughter, her name is Vanessa, but she's styled herself Nessa because it looks sleeker on the glass door of her firm has a voice like a crystal knife. When she wants to cut, she doesn't raise it. She just smiles wider. The restaurant hums around us, all brass railings and winter roses on the tables. My son Ethan is at the far end accepting congratulations for that new promotion, turning the word synergy into a toast like it's champagne. I am proud of him. I'm proud of both of them, in the way a woman who clawed dignity out of double shifts gets to be proud. But pride doesn't mean blindness. A mother who worked 2 jobs has night vision. We see in the dark what other people miss. Nessa's joke lands with the delicate thud of a thrown plate. A few guests give me that pity-curious glance. Someone coughs into a napkin. The violinist in the corner keeps sawing through silver bells as if marriages aren't built and broken to that exact beat. I rise. My chair doesn't scrape. I've learned to move without noise. Noise attracts jackals. Calm terrifies them. Sweetheart, I say, my smile pure winter sunlight. You forgot one of my professions. Oh. She leans back, confident, lipstick like a red stamp of approval she gave herself. Mother, I set the envelope by her plate, right beside the $46 microgreens she called a salad. That one I take very seriously. She rolls her eyes, pretending to be bored while her fingers betray her, tapping the edge of the paper. Ethan glances over, thinks it's a family tiff about gifts, goes back to the CFO telling him about bonuses. Typical. Men outsource their unease. The envelope is heavy with the kind of truth that dents the table when you drop it. A honey-colored seal. My initials AM centered, polite as a door knocker. I don't look at it. I keep my gaze on Nessa because control, like stilettos, is about posture. Open it, I say, and I sit, folding my napkin with the kind of patience that looks like surrender to people who've never seen a storm roll in across the lake. But before the tear of paper, the room tilts backward. The past is rude like that. Barging in without knocking. 6 months earlier, I was sleeping on Nessa's guest bed because my doctor, nice man, too soft with bad news, said words like monitoring, blood pressure, and someone in the house for a few weeks. Nessa took me in with a lawyer's smile and a planner already color blocked. Mom, this will be temporary, she said, hugging me just tight enough to make witnesses think it was love. We'll get you settled, and then we'll make some smart decisions about your assets. My house, the estate, and she was selling it. That drafty old place when she wanted me shame smelled like crayons and lemon oil and the ghost of my husband's cologne. Steve. Broad shoulders, laugh lines, a man who could fix a leaky sink and then sit on the floor with toddlers and crown himself king of blocks. He'd been a November man, steady, practical, always making lists for Christmas. He'd also carried a stone in his coat that none of us saw until too late. When he died, took his own life is the phrase the chaplain used in a voice like folded cloth. Grief didn't split us. It pickaxed us. Ethan turned his sorrow into hours at the office. He bought suits the way some men buy absolution. Nessa turned hers into a case. A plaintiff needs a defendant, and she filed me under liable. She didn't say it outright at first. She said things like, "He should have been happier, Mom, and were you really paying attention?" And later, when the wine had burned her throat and the anger found its legs, "You drove him to it. You and your small life and your nagging and your dreams that were never big enough for him." I wanted to slap her, then not her face, but the words right out of her mouth, only I was busy breathing. Sometimes that's the bravest thing older women do. Breathe and don't surrender the house key. Nessa's home had rules. Labels on everything, spices, shelves, her children's feelings. We named things to control them. She'd told her son when he cried, I organized my pill bottles next to her imported teas and pretended I didn't hear her on the phone orchestrating my future like a PR campaign. The private showings at my house started the same week my cuff tightened around my arm and told me my heart was a metronome with stage fright. Just sign the listing agreement, she said, sliding papers under my teacup like coasters. You'll thank me. I did sign a thing, something harmless, something I thought was a consultation, but my hands shook, the words swam, and I trusted my daughter because she had framed diplomas and that quick, confident pen stroke people believe like gospel. Turns out, the devil's not in the details. He's in the daughter who writes them. By the time my blood pressure behaved, the house was under contract. I'd said yes to hosting an appraiser, no to a photographer, yes to a stager. It'll feel like a hotel, Mom. You'll love it, she'd chirped, and no to sleep. The buyers were a couple with Instagram smiles and a golden doodle named after a spice. Nessa congratulated me on the number, and I poured 2 shots of whiskey into my chamomile and said nothing. The night before closing, I sat in my kitchen, the one Steve painted the color of egg yolks because he said mornings should start with cheerful things, and I cried so quietly the house leaned in to hear it. Grief is a stealthy locksmith. It knows every door you forgot to deadbolt. I looked at the walls where Ethan and Nessa had left greasy handprints after summer pool days, and at the dent in the baseboard from that time Ethan tried to ride a skateboard indoors. And at the window where Steve and I pressed our foreheads together in '03 when money was tight, whispering, "We'll make it." I realized I could make it again, only not if I handed over these keys to people who said, "We love the bones." Like they'd met my house for 5 minutes and were already talking about what they'd cut. Morning came. I called the lawyer. Not Nessa's, she has a preferred stable of men who offer options that look like choices, but the woman who handled our will back when we thought estate planning was for other people. I was coerced, I said, voice steady as a winter road. And do it. Paper can be powerful. So can a mother who decides her own signature can't be used as a weapon against her. The deal unraveled like a cheap sweater. Nessa came home to find me packing my things and my spine. She didn't scream at first. She went very still, the way some animals do before they pounce. "You cost me $1 million, she said finally, as if we were splitting a pizza and I ate her half. I reminded her it wasn't her money. She reminded me I was ungrateful, disloyal, and possibly senile. She had her husband and children to back her choir of insults, little nods, a chorus of silence standing behind the soloist. It got bad enough that one afternoon, I found the back gate unlocked and her SUV idling in my driveway like a threat. That was the day I moved home again. Doctor's advice be damned. If you're going to fight a war, don't do it from the enemy's couch. That's when the withdrawals started appearing like bruises. "By your authorization," the teller said, sliding the receipt over the counter. The signature looked like mine, like a dark parody wearing my perfume. I could smell Nessa's pen blue ink and entitlement. "Clerical error," she said on the phone, faintly amused. "I'll fix it." She didn't. She doubled down. She got louder, then meaner, then quiet in the way only a lawyer can be when she's sure she's untouchable. So I did what I do best. I worked. I took on extra shifts at the small grocery where I'd been a supervisor, and I kept my mouth shut long enough for people to assume I was harmless. Harmless women can plant forests while men debate lumber futures. I hired a detective named Joan Brittle Laugh, sensible shoes, eyes that missed nothing, who took my retainer in an envelope and returned a week later with a different envelope, thicker, meaner, heavy as fate. She laid out photographs on my dining table like a dealer with a winning hand. There was Nessa at noon on a Tuesday, hands in a stranger's hair in the shadow of a mirrored building. There was Nessa on a Thursday, same man, different scarf, a lunch that ran 90 minutes and ended with a kiss like a signature. There was Nessa, the good wife, the mother of 2, the brand of relentless advocate she sold on every billboard from Lakeview to the Loop, straddling a line in a contract she had to know by heart. No adultery or all support and spousal benefits are forfeited. C, her husband Greg, is old money with new clauses. He married Nessa for her fire, then got spooked by it. The prenup, Nessa wrote half of it herself. Prideful like a dentist doing her own drilling, said if she strayed, she'd lose the townhouse, the credit lines, the trust distributions for lifestyle optimization, and the board advisor stipend he brokered for her with a company she never actually advised. Also, her job at that boutique firm. Greg's father introduced her to the partners and greased the skids. Merit, she always said. Network, the truth replied. I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. Justice has a slow bloom. But I did feel something return to my bones, a light, old and familiar as skates on a pond, balance. When you've spent a lifetime on thin ice, you learn how to glide. I fed the detective and paid her, and then I walked into the bedroom that still smelled like Steve's wool coats in winter and sat on the cedar chest. I told the room the truth. I'm going to stop apologizing for loving you, and I'm going to stop apologizing for loving this house. And because grief is greedy, I also told Steve everything I hadn't said out loud, that I didn't see his darkness, that I was angry at him and loved him, that our daughter built herself a skyscraper out of blame and was threatening to throw me off the top, that I was tired of being good when good meant quiet and useful. I asked him for something small and improbable, a sign that this fight was righteous. The porch light flicked. Wind, probably, or faith. Sometimes those are the same thing. Then I started planning. I made a list. Get bank footage. Demand copies of withdrawal slips. Freeze lines. Call the utility about the gas bill in my name at her address. Remember the notary she uses, Valerie, with the mauve lipstick and the weak conscience. Bake cookies for Valerie. Ask direct questions. Leave long silences. Let the guilt fill them. I don't break the law. I just hold it up to the light and ask it to read itself. By the time Ethan texted to invite me to the celebratory dinner, big news, Mom, you coming? My envelope was sealed. Inside, photos, a copy of the prenup clause, bless Jones' Rolodex of court clerks, a printout of 3 withdrawals with forged signatures, and a letter, not threatening, not yet, just clarifying, return my house documents and the funds, apologize publicly for your comments, stop the harassment, or I walk this to Greg's compliance officer and every board where your name is wallpaper. It's amazing how fast compliance officers can sprint when the word breach is whispered. Now, back in the restaurant glow, Nessa slips a nail under the seal. She thinks this is a bluff. That's the great comfort of interrupting, belittling, and bulldozing for years. You start to believe no one around you learned anything while you were speaking. She peels, slows, glances up to check whether I'm performing shame. I am not, Ethan returns at last, sliding into the chair at my left, flushed with achievement and oblivious to the specific weather system forming over our table. Mom, did you try the steak? He stops when he sees the paper. What's that? A napkin ring, Nessa says, brittle. She flips the first photo face down, then the second. The third one, the elevator kiss. She can't move immediately. The man's hand is on her waist with an intimacy you can't Photoshop. Someone at the next table laughs too loudly, and Nessa flinches like the sound hit her. I can explain, she whispers, and that's when I know the war has officially begun. If you can explain, you're already negotiating the terms of your surrender. Don't. I say gently, not here. Read the letter. She snatches the page, eyes scanning, face straining. When she reaches the line about the prenup clause, her mouth opens the way it did the first time she saw the ocean, beautiful, afraid. Across the room, Ethan's boss clinks a glass for a speech. To promotions earned the hard way. Everyone cheers. Nessa's hand trembles just enough to jostle her water glass. A single bead slides down the side and pools in the groove of the table like a punctuation mark. I don't believe you, she says, but it's a reaction, not a position. You don't have to, I reply. Greg will. Ethan looks between us like a man who wandered into a courtroom wearing a party hat. What's going on? Family matters, Nessa says too fast, flattening the photos with her palm as if pressure could erase image. She folds everything back into the envelope and tucks it beneath her clutch, composed again in the brittle way of a chandelier after an earthquake. We'll talk later. Oh, we will, I say, and the waitress appears with a smile and the dessert menus that felt inevitable the moment we sat down. She offers me the Carmi Brilli. I tell her I'll take the check. Mom, Ethan protests. Tonight's my treat. Exactly, I say, sliding my card to the server anyway. Let's get used to me paying for my own life. Nessa's eyes flick to the card, hunting for a weapon. She won't find it there. My strength doesn't live on plastic. The violinist switches to Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, and I close my eyes for one beat on the line that breaks me every time. Through the years we all will be together, if the fates allow. Fates are lazy. Families have to do the work. I open my eyes and find Nessa staring at me like I'm the judge who just set her bail. Outside, Chicago is wrapped in lights. The city looks innocent from a distance, like expensive wrapping paper hiding cheap intentions. We step into the cold, our breath making small ghosts. Nessa grips my arm, smile welded on for the valet. You have no idea what you've done, she hisses between her teeth. and that's where she's wrong. I know exactly what I've done. I've stopped letting my children narrate me into an extra in their lives. Go home, I tell her, and in my pocket I feel the second envelope, the one addressed to Greg, identical in weight, truth, and handwriting. Because I'm not dramatic, I'm prepared. Ethan kisses my cheek. Proud of you, Mom, he says, and I believe he means it in the shape of his mouth even if he doesn't know what he's proud of yet. Nessa slides into a car that costs more than my first house. I watch the taillights pull red at the curb before she peels into traffic with the grace of a person who thinks the road will always part for them. My phone buzzes before the valet returns with my sedan. Unknown number. We need to talk. I chuckle. The royal we. She always did love pluralizing herself. On the drive home, snow starts flirting with the windshield. Not a storm, just a promise. I turn into my neighborhood where the trees are strung with white lights and the houses pretend they are sugar cookies. My porch light is on old habit. Bad guys prefer the dark, but something's wrong. The mailbox flag is up. I didn't leave it that way. Inside the box, an envelope with my name in Steve's handwriting. No one else knows his loops, the careful way he crossed his T's like he was measuring lumber. My knees go soft as birthday cake. I look left, right, at the quiet street that listened to my kids play tag without tripping them. The porch boards creak the way they always do, honest as ever. I slide my thumb under the flap. Inside, one line on a yellowing index card, written in the kind of pen Steve liked, cheap black ballpoint that never smudged. If she blames you, it's because she can't forgive herself. Then below, a locker number and a key taped with old Scotch tape. The key is warm from the mailbox, as if it has a pulse. I stare at it until the porch light clicks off on its timer and darkness folds over me like a heavy coat. So Nessa isn't the only one with secrets. I shut the door behind me, flip the deadbolt, and lean my back against the wood. My reflection in the hall mirror looks like a woman who remembers exactly how to fight and exactly what she's fighting for. War declared. Evidence in hand. A dead man leaving breadcrumbs. And in the morning, a safety deposit locker that might turn this little kitchen battle into a citywide campaign. I set both envelopes on the table, one for my daughter, one from my husband, and pull out a fresh sheet of paper. The heading is clean, the letters neat. Strategy. Phase 2. And then I write the first line, underlined twice. Get my house back. Get my name back. Get my peace back. The wind knocks at the window like a drunk guest. I don't answer. I have work to do, and a meeting to schedule, and a daughter who thinks fear is leverage. Let her. In the morning, I'll show her what leverage actually looks like. I didn't sleep that night. I tried. God knows I did. A book, even that old meditation tape Steve used to tease me for playing. The one where a woman's voice keeps telling you to picture a lake. But all I saw was Nessa's face when she opened the envelope. The flicker in her eyes that wasn't just fear, it was recognition. She knew she'd finally met the version of her mother who didn't take punches sitting down. At dawn, I was already dressed, hair pinned, coat zipped, the index card from Steve burning a hole in my pocket, the locker number, the key that was the mystery I didn't know I needed. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe Steve had hidden away a stack of his old fishing magazines, or worse, a goodbye letter meant to explain what no note ever could. But my gut said otherwise. I've learned to trust my gut. It's the only part of me that never let anyone else do the thinking. The bank opened at 9. I got there at 8:30. The same one where Nessa had helped me with my accounts a few months ago, the one where she sweet-talked the manager like she was auditioning for a toothpaste commercial. I walked in this time with my chin up and my cardigan replaced by a coat that meant business. The clerk at the front, a young man with a buzz cut and sympathy in his smile, led me to the vault room when I showed him the key. Locker 312. Steve's handwriting. His secret. When the metal door clinked open, I swear I heard his voice, that small, amused huff he made whenever he knew he was outsmarting me at Scrabble. Inside was a plain brown envelope, brittle from age. My name on it. Not Mom. Not Al. Just Alison. He only used my full name when he was serious, or scared, or both. I opened it right there in front of the clerk, though I could tell he'd have rather I waited. But I've been waiting my whole life for apologies, for explanations, for men to come home, so no more of that. Inside, there were 3 things. 1. A copy of an insurance policy, the kind that pays out only under certain conditions. 2. A letter in Steve's hand. 3. A photograph, old, Polaroid, slightly faded, of Steve and Nessa, standing in front of the lake cabin we used to rent up in Wisconsin. The letter was dated 6 months before his death. The handwriting was steadier than I remembered, which almost made me angrier. If he could write this clearly, he could have spoken to me instead. Alison, it began. If you're reading this, something went wrong. You'll want to know why, and I wish I could tell you in person. But the truth is I've been losing the thread. Nessa sees it. Ethan's too busy to notice. I've been talking to a man at work, a so-called investment consultant, about moving some funds. I thought it was for our future. Turns out it wasn't. He's been siphoning money through a shell company, and when I tried to back out, he made it clear what would happen if I did. I signed papers I shouldn't have. The company's name is Ardent Holdings. There's a folder in the basement safe, under the old Christmas decorations. Don't tell Nessa. She'd try to fix it, and she'd get hurt. She's too much like me that way. She always has to win. You didn't drive me to anything. You kept me standing longer than I deserved. Whatever happens, don't let guilt buy your silence. You're the strongest person I ever knew. And then, at the bottom, a single word that wrecked me: forgive. The letter trembled in my hands. Steve, my practical, list-making, steady as sunrise husband, had been blackmailed. That consultant, whoever he was, pushed him into a corner, and he never said a word. Nessa must have found something after he died. Maybe she saw the folder. Maybe she thought I knew about it and stayed quiet. Maybe her anger wasn't just greed, it was confusion, guilt twisted into blame. But that didn't excuse her. Love might explain cruelty. It doesn't erase it. I thanked the clerk, tucked the envelope inside my purse, and walked out into the wind. Chicago in December doesn't care about your grief. It bites at your face and demands you keep moving. By noon, I was in my car, driving toward my old house, the one Nessa had tried to sell out from under me. I parked across the street. I hadn't been inside since the night I took back the keys. The windows glowed faintly with the reflection of Christmas lights from the neighborhood, though mine had stayed dark for years. I was about to get out when my phone buzzed again. Nessa, we need to meet. Today. Me. When and where? Nessa. Your house. PM, don't make me come find you. Oh, the irony. She wanted to meet in the very place she'd tried to erase from my life. I spent the afternoon like a soldier sharpening her blade. First, I called the detective Joan, told her to dig into Ardent Holdings. She whistled low when I mentioned the name. Been hearing that one a lot lately, she said. Private equity cover for half a dozen dirty deals. I'll see what connects it to your late husband. Then I went home, made myself coffee so strong it could have stripped paint, and laid everything out on the kitchen table like evidence in a trial. Photos of Nessa and her lover, bank statements showing forged withdrawals, Steve's insurance papers, the letter. I added one more thing, a small recorder. Because when someone's spent a lifetime trying to twist your words, it's smart to start keeping receipts. At 6 sharp, headlights flashed through the curtains. Nessa's car purred up the driveway like a tiger pretending to be tame. She came in without knocking as always. A whiff of perfume followed her, the kind that costs 3 digits and hides the smell of panic. Nice place, she said, eyeing the dust like it offended her. Still smells like Dad's aftershave. That's because I kept it, I said evenly. I like remembering the good parts. She dropped her purse on the table and folded her arms. Let's skip the sentimental tour. What do you want, Mom? You've embarrassed me enough. Embarrassed you? I laughed softly. You tried to steal from me, humiliate me, and force me out of my home. I think you're getting the definitions mixed up. Her jaw tightened. You don't understand. I understand plenty. I slid the photos across the table. She flinched but didn't touch them. Your lover's name is Colin, isn't it? I can see why you like him. He looks a lot like Greg did before the stress set in. She stared at me, eyes flashing like a cornered animal. You wouldn't tell Greg? I interrupted. I would, in a heartbeat, but I don't need to unless you keep pushing. That got her. She sank into the chair, breathing fast. Then I placed Steve's letter in front of her. He left this. I think you should read it. She hesitated. Why? Because you've been building your hate on a lie, Nessa read. Her face shifted: pride, confusion, denial, grief. Tears started and she wiped them so fast they looked like a reflex, not emotion. When she finished, she whispered, He knew? Yes. Why didn't he tell me? Because he was protecting you. He thought you'd go after them. You're your father's daughter that way. Silence filled the room. Then she said, So you're saying you had nothing to do with it? That's what I've been saying for years. Her eyes flicked to the recorder on the table. She recognized it. Clever girl. Still recording people? She said bitterly. Still covering my bases, I said. She pushed the letter away like it burned her fingers. You think this changes anything? You blackmailed me, Mom. You spied on me. I protected myself, I corrected. Same thing your father tried to do before you, and everyone else called me crazy. Her voice rose. You ruined my marriage. I leaned forward, voice like a knife sliding out of its sheath. You ruined your marriage. I just kept the receipts. Then, as if she needed one last act of control, she reached into her purse and threw an envelope at me. For you, she spat. Inside were photocopies of my bank documents, the ones she'd forged. Only this time, my signatures were perfect. Not shaky, not tentative. She'd practiced, over and over. And one of them, one I'd never seen, authorized a wire transfer to Ardent Holdings, in my name. You really think you're the only one who can play detective? She said, coldly triumphant. That's your signature. You sent Dad's money to those people. My blood turned to ice. No, that's not. She cut me off. Greg's lawyers will love this. Maybe they'll even thank me for catching you before you hurt yourself again. Greg's lawyers? I repeated, and suddenly I understood. Oh, you're not scared of me. You're scared I'll talk to him. You think if you can destroy my credibility, you'll be safe. Believe what you want, she said, snatching her purse. But you'll regret this. You think you're some avenging angel, but you're just a lonely old woman who's about to lose everything. She walked out, heels clicking like a metronome of threat. After she left, I sat there, staring at that forged authorization. The ink looked too fresh, too recent. And that name, Ardent Holdings, it circled back again like a curse. If Nessa was desperate enough to frame me, she was desperate enough to be tangled in something bigger than pride or money. I poured myself a small glass of whiskey and stared at Steve's letter again. He had written "Don't tell Nessa" for a reason. Maybe he knew she'd be tempted to use that information. Maybe she already had. I turned the page over. There was a faint smudge, almost like a fingerprint. Under the right light, it revealed a number written in pencil. 3-1 to AX09. Joan would know what to do with that. By midnight, I'd locked up, checked every window, and sat back at the kitchen table, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. There were wars you fight with weapons, and there were wars you fight with paper, and I was done losing either kind. Tomorrow, I'd meet Greg myself. If my daughter wanted to drag me through the mud, she could watch me come out gold-plated. And as for that folder Steve mentioned, the one under the Christmas decorations, I had a feeling I'd be needing it sooner than I thought. I went down to the basement, switched on the old pull chain, and stared at the boxes stacked like memories. Christmas 1994, Ethan Toys, Steve Tools. There, at the bottom, one labeled Holiday Decor Fragile. The tape peeled easily. Inside, beneath tinsel and a chipped ornament shaped like a dove, was a locked folder. Metal clasp. My initials scratched faintly on the side. I opened it. Inside was a small flash drive and a ledger written in Steve's neat hand. Page after page of transactions, every one leading back to Ardent Holdings. And on the last line, dated a month before he died, recipient, V.M. Consulting fee $150,000. V.M. Vanessa Mitchell, my daughter. The basement light flickered. The furnace kicked on, low and steady like a warning drum. I closed the folder slowly, feeling the weight of it, the kind of truth that cracks the floorboards. Steve hadn't just been a victim. He'd been covering for someone, and that someone had his last name. I climbed the stairs, every step heavier than the last, and whispered to the empty house, "Oh, Nessa, what did you do?" I didn't sleep the next night either. There's something about knowing your child might have had a hand in her father's death that turns your blood to lightning. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Steve sitting at that kitchen table with his head in his hands, and behind him, in the corner of my mind, the faint shape of our daughter watching, waiting. By morning, the city was pale and brittle with frost. I made coffee strong enough to peel the wallpaper, wrapped myself in Steve's old flannel robe, and opened the folder again. That last entry glared up at me. VM. Consulting fee 150,000. It wasn't the amount that rattled me. It was the word consulting. Steve never paid anyone for advice unless they were fixing a roof or changing a tire. That word reeked of manipulation. I knew what I had to do next. It was time to talk to Greg. Greg Mitchell, my son-in-law, had always been polite to me in that rehearsed way rich men perfect, every handshake a contract, every smile a tax deduction. When Nessa married him, she said, "He's stability, Mom." What she didn't mention was that stability came with fine print and cameras on every wall. I called his office first. His assistant sounded surprised. Mrs. Moore? Oh, of course. Mr. Mitchell's calendar is packed today, but tell him it's about Vanessa, I interrupted. And it's serious. That did the trick. 5 minutes later, I had an appointment. Greg's office sat on the 38th floor of a glass tower overlooking the river, all steel and self-importance. The kind of place that smells faintly of fear and leather. When I walked in, his assistant's eyes widened at the folder under my arm. I smiled the way a grandmother might before she bakes a pie with arsenic in the crust. Greg greeted me with his usual courtesy, the one that barely masks contempt. Alison, I wasn't expecting. You said I could come by any time. I cut him off. Well, here I am. He gestured to a chair. Vanessa's not here. I know. I laid the folder on his desk. But you're going to want to see this. He flipped through the pages, his expression tightening with each line. When he reached the transaction with Nessa's initials, he froze. Where did you get this? From Steve, I said. He left it for me. He leaned back slowly, eyes narrowing. This can't be real. Oh, it's real, I said softly. It's also why he's dead. He stared at me for a long time, the kind of look men give when they're recalculating power. Finally, he said, Do you know what Ardent Holdings is? Not yet, I admitted, but my investigator does. He hesitated, then swore under his breath. Ardent's a shell company, a front for laundering investment losses. I heard rumors about them years ago, offshore accounts, fake consulting contracts. If Vanessa received money from them, she wasn't receiving it, I interrupted. She was demanding it. That's what broke him, Greg. He thought he was saving her. He looked pale now, his carefully managed composure cracking like ice. You're saying she was involved in. I'm saying she knew more than she ever told anyone. And when Steve tried to stop it, he paid the price. He rubbed his temples. Good God. I leaned forward. You can help me, Greg. You've got contacts, access, resources. But if you protect her, you'll lose everything too. You saw that prenup. One scandal and you're free of her legally, financially, and socially. You could make this clean. For a moment, I thought he might laugh at me, but he didn't. He just nodded slowly. What do you want? Simple, I said. My name cleared, my house back officially, and for her to stop coming after me. In exchange, I won't expose her to your board, or your lawyers, or the press. He considered this. Then, with that same corporate detachment he probably used when firing people, he said, Send me copies. I'll verify them. But Alison, he looked up. You should be careful. If she really was tangled with Ardent, she won't go down quietly. I smiled. Neither will I. When I left his office, I felt the first flicker of triumph, small, sharp, dangerous. But triumph is a flirt, not a friend. It always vanishes before the bill arrives. By the time I reached my car, I had 3 missed calls from Nessa, then a 4th from Ethan. Mom, what's going on? He asked when I answered. Vanessa's saying you're spreading rumors about her, that you're unstable. I laughed. If stability means silence, then yes, I'm unstable. He sighed, the way he used to when I made him eat vegetables. Can't you to just know, Ethan? We can't just, not anymore. I'm worried about you, Mom. Then come see me, I said. But leave your sister out of it. There are things she hasn't told you. He hesitated. She said Dad left us in debt. That you're trying to blame her for debt? I barked out a laugh that startled even me. No, sweetheart. Your father left us a puzzle, and your sister's fingerprints are all over the missing pieces. He went quiet. Then, in a softer tone, I'll come by tomorrow. Good, I said. Bring your eyes open. That night, I sat on the porch with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders and the folder beside me. The street was still, the air sharp with wood smoke. I thought about Steve, the way he'd hum Christmas songs under his breath while untangling lights, how he'd wink when I burned the cookies but ate them anyway. I whispered into the cold, I'm still fighting, Steve. Then, almost as if an answer, my phone buzzed. A message from Joan. Got something. Ardent tied to shell account in Nessa's name. Sending docs tomorrow. Be careful. Someone's asking questions about you. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Someone was digging into me? I didn't like that at all. The next morning, I woke to the sound of someone knocking hard. Not the polite knock of a neighbor or the rhythm of a delivery man. This was urgent. I grabbed my robe and went to the door. 2 men stood there in dark suits. One flashed a badge. Mrs. Alison Moore? Yes. I'm Agent Turner. This is Agent Reynolds. We're with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Of course you are. I thought grimly. We're investigating irregularities linked to a company called Ardent Holdings. We understand your late husband had contact with them. I nodded slowly. Yes, he did. And he left me evidence. They exchanged a quick look. We'd like to see that. I led them to the kitchen table, where the folder still sat. I half expected Nessa to come crashing through the window, screaming about attorney-client privilege. Turner flipped through the pages. This is substantial. Where did you get it? My husband left it in a safe deposit box. Reynolds frowned. And your daughter? She doesn't know about it. I lied. Mrs. Moore, Turner said carefully. We have reason to believe funds were recently transferred to Ardent using your name and signature. We'll need to verify the authenticity. I met his gaze squarely. Then you'll find forgery. My daughter's quite skilled at it. They exchanged another look. You're saying Vanessa Mitchell forged your authorization? I'm not saying. I'm stating. Reynolds made a note. Would you be willing to provide a handwriting sample? With pleasure. They left an hour later with copies of everything: the ledger, the letter, even a few of the photos from Joan's investigation. When they were gone, I sat there shaking, not from fear but from clarity. This wasn't just a family war anymore. This was federal. That evening, Ethan arrived. He looked tired, older somehow. Success had carved shadows under his eyes. Mom, he said, stepping inside. I talked to Nessa. Of course you did. She's panicking. She says you're trying to destroy her. I poured him coffee, slid the mug across the table. I'm trying to save her from herself. He ran a hand through his hair. She said Dad left money to someone, that you're hiding it. Oh, she knows about that, does she? I leaned back. Then she knows it wasn't a bequest. It was a payoff. Ethan blinked. A payoff? For what? For silence. Or cooperation. Hard to tell which. He stared at me like I'd just spoken in tongues. You think Nessa had something to do with Dad's? I think she made a deal she couldn't live with, I said. And your father paid the bill. He pushed back his chair, stunned. I need proof. You'll have it, I said. Tomorrow, when Joan brings the documents. He nodded slowly. I'll be here. That night, I triple-locked the doors. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. Around midnight, I heard a car outside idling. I peeked through the blinds. A dark sedan, no headlights. I called Joan, straight to voicemail. Then I noticed something. The mailbox flag was up again. I slipped outside, robe tight, breath fogging. The sedan didn't move. Inside the mailbox, another envelope. No return address. My name written in elegant, familiar handwriting. I opened it under the porch light. Inside, a single photograph, one I'd never seen. It was Nessa, years younger, standing with a man I didn't recognize. Slick hair, expensive suit. He had his hand on her shoulder. Behind them, barely visible, the sign, Ardent Holdings Chicago office. And on the back, in Steve's handwriting, he warned her. She didn't listen. The wind picked up, scattering snow across the porch. The sedan drove off at last, its taillights disappearing into the dark. I stood there, clutching the photo, realizing that I wasn't just unearthing Nessa's crimes, I was stepping into a minefield Steve had tried to die to protect us from. And if Ardent Holdings was still out there, someone else already knew I had the evidence. That meant only one thing. The next move had to be mine. And this time, it wouldn't be quiet. The next morning broke with the kind of gray light that makes you feel like you're living inside a bruise. Chicago was shivering under a fine crust of frost, and I was sitting at the kitchen table with Steve's ledger spread out like a confession. The coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but I didn't move. Every line of ink felt like a heartbeat that had stopped mid-sentence. Ethan hadn't shown up yet. I told myself he was just late, but that little whisper inside me, the one that saved my hide more than once, said otherwise. Then came the knock. I jumped, heart slamming. It wasn't polite. It was impatient, that rap of someone who thinks your time belongs to them. When I opened the door, it wasn't Ethan. It was Joan. Only Joan didn't look like herself. She wasn't wearing her usual smirk or her leather satchel. Her hair was down, her coat unbuttoned, and there was a streak of something on her cheek, soot maybe. Morning, Alison, she said, her voice low. We need to talk inside. I let her in. She didn't sit, just hovered near the window, glancing out at the street. You followed? I asked. Maybe. Hard to say. There's been a black SUV tailing me since last night. I arched a brow. Ardent, most likely. She took a small flash drive from her pocket and laid it on the table. Everything you asked for and a lot you didn't. You were right about Nessa. She wasn't just receiving money from Ardent, she was their intermediary, the front woman for their legal cover. I blinked. Come again? She set up shell agreements for them, consulting contracts, mergers that didn't exist. She probably thought it was harmless bookkeeping, but once she realized she was laundering stolen investments, she couldn't walk away. I leaned forward. So Steve found out. Exactly. He confronted her and Ardent, tried to pull the plug. They threatened him. He panicked. And she? Joan hesitated. She let them believe he'd talk. That's when they closed in. My stomach twisted. You mean Steve didn't die because of despair, Alison. He died because someone wanted him quiet. For a moment, the air in the kitchen froze. I swear I could hear the hum of the refrigerator stop mid-cycle. Then Joan continued. I traced the $150,000 payment to an Ardent branch account. Guess who authorized the transfer? Not Steve. Not Nessa. You. I slammed my palm on the table. She forged it. Again. Joan nodded. Yes, but this time, it wasn't just to steal. It was to shift blame. If things went south, it would look like you were Ardent's accomplice. Oh, she's thorough. I'll give her that. Joan gave a weary smile. She learned from the best. I raised an eyebrow. Meaning? You, she said simply. You raised a fighter. Unfortunately, she's fighting the wrong war. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Text message. You're not safe. Leave the house now. No signature. Joan, I said quietly, showing her the screen. She grabbed her bag. That's not paranoia anymore. That's warning. Move. We barely made it out the back door before I heard the sound of car door slamming, footsteps crunching fast over ice. Joan pulled me behind the hedge. 2 men were coming up the front steps. Not FBI. These ones didn't knock. One carried a small black duffel, the kind you don't bring flowers in. Get in the car, Joan whispered. We slid into her sedan, ducking low as the engine turned over. The men didn't see us. As we pulled away, I glanced back. One of them was picking the lock. They wanted something, probably the ledger. Good thing it wasn't there anymore. We drove to a diner outside Evanston, the kind where the waitresses still call you hon and the coffee tastes like old newsprint. Joan took the booth by the window, back to the wall. They'll realize you're gone soon, she said. And when they do, they'll start making calls. You need to get ahead of this. I'm already ahead, I said. I have Greg. He's verifying the documents. He'll corroborate my story to the feds. Joan gave me a look that said, you really think a man like that will risk his fortune for you? I sighed. You don't trust him. I don't trust anyone who owns 3 houses and calls it minimalist. She slid the flash drive across the table. This is everything: bank trails, emails, the original contracts with Nessa's signature. If you hand it to the FBI before Ardent gets to it, they can't frame you. But if you hesitate, she let the sentence hang. I picked up the drive, feeling its weight. Small, cold, deadly. I'll deliver it myself. Not tonight, she said. You need rest. You look like a ghost who hasn't eaten in days. I smiled faintly. Ghosts don't eat. They haunt. We parted ways an hour later. I watched her car vanish into the snowfall before heading back toward my house. The cops had cordoned off my street. 2 cruisers, 1 unmarked sedan. The front door stood open. A uniformed officer saw me and waved me over. Ma'am, you live here? Yes. Someone broke in about 30 minutes ago. House is a mess. Nothing taken except a few documents, of course. He took my statement, polite but distracted. I could tell he thought I was just another jittery old lady with too many candles and not enough sense. But then I saw a small envelope on the porch, sealed, my name scrawled across it in Nessa's handwriting. When I picked it up, the officer called out, Ma'am, don't too late. I'd already opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Mom, stop. You're making this worse. They're watching all of us now. You don't know what you're dealing with. I almost laughed. Oh, I know exactly what I'm dealing with, I muttered. A daughter who danced with devils and didn't expect her mother to learn the steps. I spent that night in a motel near O'Hare. Couldn't risk the house again. The walls there felt different, thinner, eager to listen. I put the flash drive under the mattress, poured myself cheap wine from a plastic bottle, and stared at the muted TV. They were showing a local news segment about corporate fraud. A familiar logo flashed briefly in the background: Ardent Holdings. The anchor said, sources say federal investigators are closing in on the company after new evidence surfaced linking its operations to multiple shell accounts in Chicago. I sat bolt upright. That was Joan's doing. She must have leaked the first batch. Good woman. Then my phone rang. Mom? Ethan's voice. Breathless. Afraid? Ethan, what is it? They took Nessa. I froze. Who? I don't know. The men black car. I saw it from across the street. They pushed her into the back seat. She screamed your name. Did you call the police? Yes. But his voice cracked. They think she staged it, that it's some kind of hoax. It wasn't. I knew better. Ardent was cleaning house. And they'd started with my daughter. For the first time in weeks, my anger gave way to something else, a sharp, aching terror that only mothers know. The kind that makes you want to tear the world apart to find your child, even when she's tried to destroy you. I threw on my coat, grabbed the flash drive, and headed for the door. The snow outside was coming down harder now, erasing footprints as fast as they were made. The city was turning into a blank page. Well, fine. I'd write my own ending. I dialed Greg as I drove. He answered on the third ring. Greg, it's Alison. They've taken her. A pause. Then, I know. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel. You what? I just got the call. A ransom. They want the files. The Ardent files? Yes. They said if I don't hand them over by midnight, he swallowed. They'll make it look like she disappeared willingly. You know what that means. I knew. It meant they'd erase her digitally, legally, physically. Greg, I said, voice steady, you'll get her back, but not their way. Mine. By midnight, I was parked outside the Riverfront Warehouse District, the address Joan had once mentioned when describing Ardent's Chicago base. The snow was a curtain of white, softening everything but the fear in my gut. Inside my coat pocket, the flash drive felt warm, alive. I wasn't armed, didn't need to be. My weapon was truth, and I'd spent 62 years learning how to aim it. When I stepped into that building, I wasn't a cashier, a mother, or a victim. I was Alison Moore, widow, warrior, and woman who'd finally decided to stop being polite about survival. And somewhere inside those walls, my daughter was waiting. The warehouse district was half asleep under a film of snow, the river coughing up fog like a dying dragon. My breath hung in the air as I stepped out of the car. The place smelled of cold metal and gasoline, the kind of smell that reminds you life can end quick and unceremonious. I could see them from across the lot, 2 guards by the side door, dressed like workmen, but standing too straight. One smoked a cigarette, the other watched the street. Typical Ardent goons, corporate muscle with criminal manners. I'd spent decades reading faces across checkout counters, knowing when someone was about to cheat me out of change. These men had the same look, arrogance held together by fear. I ducked behind a stack of shipping pallets, pulled the knit cap down over my ears, and waited. When the smoker flicked his cigarette and stepped around the corner, I moved. Quick, quiet. The second guard never saw me coming. One well-aimed whack with the tire iron I'd pulled from my trunk and he folded like bad origami. His friend spun around just in time to catch my glare. Don't even think about it, I said. My patients retired years ago. He lifted his hand slowly. Lady, you don't know who I do, I snapped. Ardent Holdings, which means you answer to people who should have been buried under indictments by now. Where's my daughter? He hesitated. I raised the iron an inch higher. Inside, he muttered. Upstairs office. But you don't want to go in there. Oh honey, I said, I really do. I locked them both in the maintenance shed and slipped inside through the side door, closing it softly behind me. The warehouse interior was vast and echoing, a cathedral for the unholy. The overhead lights were half dead, flickering like candles in a dying church. Pallets of shrink-wrapped boxes lined the walls, computers, financial documents, evidence of 100 dirty deals. And at the far end, up a flight of metal stairs, a rectangle of light, an office window. A shadow moved inside. I took a breath and started climbing. Each step groaned under my boots, but I didn't care. Let them hear me coming. At the top, the office door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. Nessa sat in a chair, hands bound, hair wild, eyes blazing with the fury of a woman who'd finally realized she wasn't the smartest person in the room. Across from her stood a man in a tailored coat, silver hair, smooth voice. He turned as I entered. Mrs. Moore, he said pleasantly. You're earlier than expected. I recognized him instantly, the man from the photograph. The one with his hand on Nessa's shoulder. Mr. Ardent himself, I presume, I said. He smiled thinly. Names are fluid in my business. Let's keep it simple, call me Cole. I stepped forward. You've got something that belongs to me. And you, he said, have something that belongs to me. His gaze flicked to my coat pocket. The flash drive. I smiled. You mean this old thing? I pulled it out just enough for him to see it gleam. You'll have to earn it. Cole's eyes narrowed. You don't understand what's on there. Oh, I understand perfectly. It's a ledger of greed, fraud, and murder. You killed my husband, he sighed. Tragic situation. But strictly speaking, your husband killed himself. Guilt can be persuasive. Because you made it that way, I snapped. You used my daughter, blackmailed my family, and you think you can just walk away? Walk? His smile widened. I intend to run. With your cooperation. He motioned to one of the guards inside the office. I hadn't even seen him until now. The man stepped forward, gun drawn. Let's not be theatrical, Mrs. Moore. Put the drive on the desk. Nessa's voice broke through. Mom, don't quiet, Cole hissed. That was his mistake. He looked away from me for half a second, and half a second is all I ever needed in this life. I flung the flash drive across the room. It hit the metal cabinet and bounced under the desk. Cole turned to track it, gun still in his hand. I kicked the leg of Nessa's chair, tipping her sideways just as the gun fired. The bullet shattered the office window. The sound was thunder in a cage. I grabbed the desk lamp and swung it hard, catching the gunman across the wrist. The weapon clattered to the floor. Nessa scrambled toward it, hands still tied. Keys, I shouted. She nodded toward Cole's pocket. I reached for him, the years of anger giving me strength I didn't know I still had. He wasn't expecting that most people underestimate women with gray hair and good posture. We struggled. The gun went off again, grazing my arm, but pain is a luxury I don't afford anymore. I drove my knee into his ribs, felt something crack. He dropped the keys. Nessa crawled over, hands shaking, and freed herself. Get the drive, I barked. She ducked under the desk and came up clutching it like it was the Holy Grail. Go, I shouted, out the back stairs. But Cole wasn't finished. He pulled another gun from his coat, eyes wild now. You think you've won, old woman? Not yet, I said. And then I did what every mother who's ever had to choose between survival and fear knows how to do. I improvised. The lamp was still in my hand. I yanked its cord from the socket, sparks flying, and swung it full force at the window. The glass exploded outward, snow and wind screaming into the room. The sudden noise, the freezing air, it startled him just long enough. Nessa aimed the gun she'd picked up. Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't. Drop it, he smirked. You wouldn't. The shot was deafening. Cole stumbled backward, eyes wide with disbelief, clutching his shoulder. Guess she would, I said. We ran. We made it out through the back stairs and into the alley. My lungs burned from the cold. Nessa was shaking but alive. I could see the outline of police lights flashing 2 blocks away. Greg must have called them. When we reached the street, a black SUV screeched around the corner, the same one from before. For a second, I thought it was more ardent men, but the doors burst open and 2 FBI agents jumped out. Agent Turner raised his badge. Mrs. Moore, Mrs. Mitchell, drop the weapon. Nessa tossed the gun into a snowbank. You're late, I shouted. Turner grimaced. We traced the ardent signal here, didn't expect fireworks. Reynolds moved past us, weapon drawn. We've got movement inside. I grabbed Turner's arm. He's wounded but dangerous. Name's Cole, and you'll find enough evidence in there to shut down his entire operation. Turner nodded. You did good, Mim. Don't thank me, I said. Just make sure my husband didn't die for nothing. Hours later, we were in a federal office downtown, wrapped in blankets, fingers curled around styrofoam cups of coffee. Nessa sat across from me, pale and silent. She looked smaller, somehow stripped of her armor of success and pride. Turner came in, folder in hand. Cole's in custody. He's talking and your names are clear. The files you brought us connect 6 shell accounts directly to him. I nodded. Good. He hesitated. But there's one thing. Before we raided the warehouse, someone accessed the Ardent servers remotely, deleted several files. We don't know who. I didn't need to ask. I already knew. Nessa looked up, eyes red. I did it, she whispered. Before you came, I thought if I erased my part, maybe. She trailed off, tears welling. I was scared, Mom. For the first time in a long time, I reached across the table and took her hand. You should be. She sobbed quietly. I never meant for Dad to. I know, I said. And I did. Somewhere in that mess of ego and fear, she was still my little girl who used to draw hearts on my grocery lists. But forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting. When they released us, dawn was breaking again, another pale Chicago morning. Nessa stood by the curb, looking lost. What happens now? She asked. You'll cooperate with the feds. You'll tell them everything. And then you'll learn how to live without power for a while. And you? I'll go home. She swallowed hard. Do you hate me? I shook my head. No, but I'm done saving you. Her tears froze on her cheeks. She nodded, then walked away toward Greg's waiting car. I watched her go until the taillights vanished into the traffic. When I finally drove back to my house, the sun was just beginning to warm the snow. The place looked peaceful again, battered but standing. Like me, I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and breathed in the familiar scent of wood polish and ghosts. On the kitchen table lay Steve's letter, the edges curling slightly. I read it one last time. You're the strongest person I ever knew. Damn right, I whispered. Then I poured myself a cup of coffee, black and bitter, and stared out at the morning. The war was over, but wars like that don't end clean. There's always one more secret waiting to crawl out of the dark. And I had a feeling this one wasn't finished yet. Because on my phone, a new message had just appeared. No number, just words. Not everyone in Ardent was caught. We need to talk. I smiled. Oh, of course we do. And I reached for my coat again. The phone in my hand buzzed again. Same message, same numberless void. We need to talk. It was never a request. Men like Cole didn't send messages, they cast lures. And if someone from Ardent was still out there, this was bait. But I've been bait before, and I've learned how to bite back with teeth. I put the phone down on the counter, poured myself a refill of coffee, and stared at Steve's photo on the wall. You hearing this, darling? I said quietly. They still think I'm afraid. Outside, the street was hushed and white, the kind of morning that looks peaceful only if you don't know what's buried under the snow. I called Joan. She picked up on the second ring. Tell me you didn't get that text, she said immediately. Oh, I did. Don't respond. I already did. Alison, relax, Joan. I only said 2 words. When and where? A sigh crackled through the line. You're incorrigible. Old dogs, new tricks, she groaned. Send me your location. I'll follow you. The meeting point came an hour later by text. The pier. Noon. Come alone. Classic. Public enough to seem safe, private enough for trouble. I drove there with the ledger tucked under the passenger seat and Steve's letter in my coat pocket like armor. The lake was gray and churning, slabs of ice bumping into the pylons with dull knocks. A figure was waiting at the end of the pier. Not Cole to lean, too young. A woman actually. Long red coat, gloves, dark hair whipped by the wind. She turned when she heard my boots on the boards. Mrs. Moore, she called. Her voice was smooth, educated, practiced. Thank you for coming. I stopped a few feet away. You've got about 60 seconds before I stop being polite. Who are you? She smiled faintly. My name's Evelyn Cole. The wife. The wife no one had mentioned, because powerful men prefer their women like their crimes, invisible. Your husband's in federal custody, I said. If you're here to beg mercy, you're talking to the wrong woman. She laughed softly. Oh, I'm not here for him. He's a fool. I'm here for myself and for you. I folded my arms. You'll have to be clearer than that. Ardent wasn't just his empire, she said. It was mine. He built the front. I built the foundation. Every shell company, every offshore account. You think he had the brains for that? No, dear. That was me. And you're confessing this because you still have something that doesn't belong to you. That ledger. I tilted my head. Funny. I thought it was evidence. Her expression hardened. It's a death sentence. For both of us. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Cole will take a deal. Give up names. The Bureau will follow the trail to me. To you. To every transaction. Do you want to spend your golden years being cross-examined about signatures you didn't write? I've survived worse interrogations. Try raising 2 teenagers on a gas station paycheck. Her lips twitched despite herself. You're sharp. I like that. I smiled. That makes one of us. She took something from her pocket, a small drive, identical to mine. Here's the thing. I've copied everything. And I have backups overseas. You can't erase this. But you can choose how it ends. Hand over your ledger, and I'll make sure the narrative stays clean. Your name, your husband's untouched. Tempting, I said. But I've learned the hard way. People who promise mercy usually mean silence. Evelyn sighed. You really are your own worst enemy. I prefer survivor. That's when I saw Joan's reflection in the lake moving fast along the pier behind Evelyn, silent as a shadow. I gave her a single nod. Evelyn turned just as Joan closed the distance. FBI, ma'am, Joan said crisply, flashing her badge. We've been expecting this. Evelyn's eyes widened. You set me up. I shrugged. You invited me. I just brought a friend. Those files destroy everything, she hissed. Then let's see what's worth saving, I said. Joan cuffed her, reading her rights while Evelyn spit curses that could strip paint. By the time Turner's team arrived to take her in, she'd gone quiet again, frozen, elegant, furious. As they led her past me, she said, You think this is over? You're standing in the ruins of your own life. I leaned close enough for her to smell my coffee breath. Sweetheart, I built my life from ruins. You'll see. By the time I got home, the sky was bleeding pink and gold over the rooftops. The storm had broken. Nessa was waiting on my porch, bundled in a coat to sizes too big for her pride. She stood when I got out of the car. Mom, I crossed my arms. You look like someone who's learned to breathe again. I have, she said softly. Greg cut me off. The firm dropped me, but the bureau wants me to testify. They said I could help take the rest of Ardent down. I nodded. Then do it. She hesitated. You're not angry? Oh, I'm furious, I said. But anger's just fuel. What you do next determines whether it burns or builds. She swallowed. I don't know where to start. Start by telling the truth. We went inside. I made us tea, the old-fashioned way, with a kettle that wheezed like an asthmatic cat. She sat at the table where this whole nightmare began, her hands wrapped around the mug. Do you ever miss him? She asked quietly. Every damn day, I said. Do you think he'd forgive me? I looked at her for a long moment. I think he already did. But you'll have to forgive yourself, and that's the hard part. She nodded, eyes glistening. I'll try. Good. Because we're going to need all the courage we can get. Her head jerked up. Why? I slid the morning paper across the table. The headline read, Ardent Holdings Scandal Deepens, Files Hint at Political TIs. Below it, a grainy photo me, stepping onto the pier beside Evelyn Cole. They're going to come after both of us in court, I said. She wasn't lying about that part. Nessa stared at the photo, then back at me. What will you do? I smiled. What I always do. Keep receipts, stay loud, and never let them write my story for me. Weeks passed. The investigation swallowed the city. Politicians fell, executives resigned, and the Ardent logo vanished from every downtown building like a ghost erased at sunrise. My name appeared in the papers to local widow exposes financial conspiracy, the kind of headline that makes strangers smile at you in grocery stores. I went back to part-time work at the market, because dignity doesn't depend on titles. Nessa kept her promise. She testified. Greg filed for divorce quietly. She moved into a small apartment near the lake, started volunteering at a legal aid clinic. I visited sometimes. We didn't talk about the past. We just sat by the window and let the silence be softer than it used to be. Ethan called every Sunday. He'd begun to understand that success wasn't the same as strength. And me? I kept the house. I planted lilacs in the spring and painted the shutters blue, just like Steve always meant to. One morning, while cleaning the attic, I found an old cassette in a box labeled Xmas 1998. I played it. Steve's voice filled the room, warm and laughing. If you're hearing this, Al, I guess I didn't label over it for the kids' recital. Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Don't ever stop fighting for us. I sat there in the dust and sunlight and whispered, I didn't. The following Christmas, Nessa came over for dinner. We cooked too much, drank too much, and laughed more than we had in years. When she left, she hugged me tighter than she ever had. On the doorstep she said, You know, you were right. You can't insult your own mother. I winked. Took you long enough to learn it. She grinned. Guess I had a hell of a teacher. I watched her car disappear into the snow, the same way I once watched her drive away from everything that mattered. But this time, she'd be back. Later, I sat alone by the tree, the house aglow with colored lights and quiet peace. On the table lay the ledger, bound now with a red ribbon, waiting for the Bureau's archives. I picked up my pen and added one last line to the final page. Lesson learned: blood TIs don't break. They bend. And sometimes that's enough. Then I closed it, turned off the lights, and let the dark feel kind for once. Because after 62 years of surviving everything from double shifts to betrayal, I'd finally found the one thing nobody could forge, steal, or silence, my own damn peace. And that, my dear, was worth every fight.